Call to order the February 16, 2023 East Bank Stadium Committee meeting. We've got a quorum of committee members here. Thanks for attending. And we've got a pretty short agenda to get an update about the status of negotiations between the team and the mayor's office. And Mr. Jameson is here from the mayor's office, so I'm going to turn it over for him to give us whatever information he is able to share.
Thank you, Councilman, and thank you, Council members. Committee with us today is our notorious council. I should first state we were also expecting Michelle Lane from procurement to be with us, and I don't know if it's because of the weather or not, but I'm trying to get in touch with her. She had some updates on the status of the developer RFP, but Jeff is with us here today to answer any questions. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to state in advance, but let me hand you the mic.
Sure, if you would. We met with the Sports Authority this morning, and I will tell you exactly what I told them, but I'll tell you maybe with more of a council bent to it. What I told them is that every expectation is that in March there will be a resolution brought to the Sports Authority that would have all of the definitive documents that would need to be approved by the Sports Authority attached to it as substantially final exhibits. That would include for their resolution the intergovernmental financing agreement with you, the state funding agreement from the state that committed the $500 million, development agreement, no surprise there, for the development of the new stadium, the stadium lease, a site coordination agreement between the team and the Sports Authority and Metro that really relates to both parking in the campus and sort of the interaction of the campus itself and the Metro, let's call it the Metro development with the stadium, a non-relocation agreement from the team where they would, agree to not relocate for the term of the lease, a team guarantee, and a PSL agreement. Last but not least, an amendment to the existing lease, shorten the term, clean up some things. All of that would be presented to the Sports Authority under a resolution. The council then would have its own legislation, which we envision being a single ordinance that would include for approval the intergovernmental agreement, the site coordination agreement, the two things that Metro is a party to, but exhibited to it or made available with it would be sort of all of those, it's going to be public record. So all of those Sports Authority documents would accompany that, and you would have those as context for your consideration. So we are continuing all of the various sort of outside lawyers, outside consultants are all working on it and working as fast as we can and hope to get that to you as soon as possible. That's my sort of the council version of what Tom Cross and I said this morning.
And maybe there isn't an answer to this, but I'll go ahead and ask it. I hear getting it to us in March for the March 7th meeting. I guess it would have to be done by noon on next Friday. And I think I'm right about that, Mr. Jameson.
I don't have a calendar by it, but it's
that's
Friday before.
The 24th corresponds to the 7th. That's correct.
Yeah. So are we going to see it at first reading on March 7th?
March is what I have been told.
Okay. So I'll ask it a couple more times. You can keep saying the same thing if you want. Okay. So definitely not March 7, or it could be either one. Don't know.
No, don't know.
Okay. And then is racetrack legislation going to be pending at the same time?
The administration's hope has been never to let these overlap, simply because of bandwidth issues for council. We're cognizant of that, so our hope is that they don't. We're mindful of we have the blackout date to work around, and so juggling that. But it's at a point now where it's Fair Board controls the process, and they are, I think, doing due diligence by any description, and maybe they wrap that up quickly, or maybe they're taking several more weeks. We don't know, and we're trying not to pressure them.
When you say blackout date, what do you mean?
So to the extent, if there was any, I'm blanking on the council rule, but to the extent there would be any spending or bond issuance involving the Speedway, we can't submit that during the period when the operating budget is pending. It essentially boils down to May and June. Council can't consider it. I guess theoretically it could be filed but not considered. That seems a little sloppy. So we just have to work around those blackout months.
All right, and then I've got a couple more questions for them, and then open it up to y'all. And I think this is for you, Mr. Oldham. Well, I'm going to express something that I'm concerned about, and tell me whether my concern is misplaced or not. Some of the pending legislation at the state right now appears to go after sales tax and hotel occupancy tax related to the convention center, and those are the same sort of taxes that are implicated for the football stadium. And so it seems like if the state can unring the bell a decade later for sales tax and hotel occupancy tax for one facility, then they could do it for another. And then I've seen Speaker Sexton quoted, I think in the Business Journal, saying, well, maybe there's going to be an amendment, and the amendment would just keep Metro from getting any money from those revenue streams, and it would have to stay at the convention center to pay bonds. And of course, there's a similar feature in the term sheet. I think it's on page 13, to let Metro get up to $25 million a year from the tax capture zone for the football stadium. And so my concern is just the mere act of talking about taking away dedicated funding streams that are apparently directly analogous to what we're talking about here injects risk for Metro taxpayers into the football stadium deal. I'm wondering if you have a reaction to that.
I guess I'd say two things. One is we're certainly cognizant of everything you just said. The second thing I'd say is, and I think I'm following the lead here of the law department, I think they are also cognizant of these two things, of all the legislation that's floating around, these in particular. I think they have concerns about them. I think they're working hard to address them in a way that that sort of works for all of this, but these are questions that are going to have to be answered.
All right, I appreciate that. Let me ask committee members, anybody else have a question? Go ahead, Councilmember Druffel.
This might be obvious, but are we going to get any incremental amount, or is this information going to come all at one time and in term sheet we're just going to get this, or is this going to be fed in increments?
I think it should be all at once.
Okay, I thought so, but I just wanted to verify that there might not be an opportunity to get some preliminary view.
It'll be a big package.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Chair. Something that I've harped on in the last couple months about these documents that will be before council for approval in March, April, May. Each of these agreements that we approve. So let me ask this: of the 7 or so agreements that are going to be in this stack of documents we get, how many of those require council approval?
Two, the intergovernmental agreement and the site coordination agreement.
So like the lease agreement would be strictly between the Sports Authority and the Titans?
That's correct.
Okay, but so the borrowing of the money, the bonds are going to be us, right?
Well, no, the Sports Authority will issue the bonds. There will be an intergovernmental agreement by which you convey tax and other revenues that are yours, that get directed to you. You then funnel those to the Sports Authority to pay debt service on their bonds, but the Sports Authority would issue their bonds. And for what it's worth, your legislation would approve the issuance of bonds and put, there will be a list of conditions, that come with that approval. It wouldn't just be a blanket approval.
And I suppose with I guess that much of the structure of this deal in the Sports Authority's purview, there's legislation as well to remake the structure of the Sports Authority, to change the appointing authorities there. So, I guess you might not have an answer for this today, but what risk does that expose us to of, say, further state action being taken, against Nashville, of, potentially stacking the Sports Authority with folks who have a political agenda or are looking to, make things tougher on Nashville taxpayers or something like that? How do we sort of defend against that, navigate that?
And I know this is unhelpful. I'd offer you the same answer that I offered Councilman Mendez when he asked about the Music City Center legislation. We're certainly cognizant of it. It's absolutely a fair question to ask. Will be a fair question to ask. I think the Department of Law, you jump in here if I go astray, is equally focused on it and working to find a solution that works.
Okay. And so this, like the lease, we approved the initial one, and then I assume that amendments would not come back before this body if it's not something that we even need to approve in the first place. Is that correct?
Well, so I would envision, and again, it's not final, I would envision that the intergovernmental agreement where you're saying to the Sports Authority, hey, you go issue the bonds, you go oversee the development of the stadium, you lease it for 30 years, we'll send you this money, would have a provision that said, oh, and by the way, you're not allowed to completely undo that deal or change it in a material way, as long as we've got our arrangement. So even though the primary contractual arrangement will be between the Sports Authority and the team, you will have the ability, by way of the intergovernmental agreement, to limit the universe of changes they could make. And I suspect, I'll get into it, I suspect that there are some, color of the light fixtures you don't want any part of. There are other changes that you absolutely would, want a part of. And so I would envision that provision being in the intergovernmental agreement.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't know how to I don't want to overstate this, but just the importance of like protecting against these future possibilities. Like we see, like what action is being pursued today. What will next session bring? What will next session bring? And so the extent that that can be thought through and hedged against, I guess, is something that I'm going to be looking for in these agreements, certainly. So thank you.
If I can follow up on a couple of those questions. Mr. Oldham, so the documents that Metro's not directly a party to, like the lease and the development agreement, I was hearing you say that those will be in some form or fashion exhibits to the other agreements. So we're going to see them all as part of the package.
Yes.
So that addresses your concern, Councilman Parker. And then I've sent some emails to council that I'm not going to characterize, but along the lines that Councilman Parker mentioned, there has to be something built into the architecture of the deal to guard against the appointment power of the Sports Authority changing to the control of the state. Something has to be done about that in the deal. And I think you know how I feel about that from other communications. So I'm just doubling down on that. Like, we can't take the risk of having a $2 billion stadium and related development controlled by an authority that we don't control. And the state has injected that risk, and they can't unring the bell on that risk. It's out there, and we need to have something built into the deal about that. Anybody else have questions for Mr. Oldham or Mr. Jameson? All right. Mike? Just, you had somebody else you invited.
From the procurement division of the finance department, Michelle Lane is here. I think just to answer any questions council members may have. And can I?
All right, I'll do like law school. Last we heard from you was December. What happened next?
There's been a lot of activity. Of course, we've issued a solicitation for a developer for the property there, related projects. It's currently on the street. The responses are due on the 3rd. As you can imagine, there's been significant interest in the project, a number of folks who've attended the pre-offer meeting for the project. I will advise that pursuant to the ethics provision in the procurement code, a specific piece of legislation which modified that provision in the code, we are now receiving disclosures from prospective offers regarding portions of their team that potentially could be prohibited from participation in this project because of their participation in previous related projects. And so we have received those disclosures. They are being reviewed to determine whether or not that participation is what could be considered material and substantial. Based upon those reviews, prospective offers will be so notified, and also based upon the that specific provision in the code, those prospective offers will have the opportunity to request a waiver that will be presented to the Procurement Standards Board for consideration. So I don't believe that we're outside of the procurement process to share those details because, of course, it is public to the extent that the information has been made available to all prospective offers that would be potentially interested in the project. But that's where we are in this process. And again, the advertised close date for receipt of proposals is March 3rd.
And what would be the next steps after March 3rd?
After March 3rd, the identified evaluation committee, which has already been presented to me for consideration, I've approved that committee. The committee will review those proposals, review it against the evaluation criteria that was listed that was listed in the solicitation itself. They will come to a consensus about the best evaluated and make a recommendation for approval.
Is there a timeline for that, or is that up to the?
It really is kind of up in the air. Of course, we're moving as expediently as possible because I believe everybody understands the urgency with the process, but we also want to make sure that we get it right and that we're taking the time that's needed to evaluate the entirety of the proposals. And these are a little different than the standard proposals we'd receive in response to an RFP because there are a lot of elements to it that have to be considered. But I don't know exactly what the time frame will be, but it will be appropriate given the responses that we receive. It's kind of hard to say exactly what that looks like because we don't know how many responses we're going to receive.
Okay, thanks. Any questions for Ms. Lane? Looks like no. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much.
Hey, Mr. Jameson, let me ask you this. Back in December, when some folks, including me, were asking about all the things that were unknown still in the term sheet, one of the responses was, well, that's why we need to get the development partner to the table because we need to know the development partner to work out the rest of the details for the final terms. And it sounds like maybe thoughts have changed about that because the development partner is not going to be identified by the time the legislation's done. So how have you guys worked through the things that you needed a development partner for?
I think we would probably have to rely on the group that would be applying responses that they might have for how would you answer this question, how would you answer that question, because until we've actually identified the single development partner or partners, we're not going to have that information.
All right. I recall there were details about like what parking was going to cost and where parking is going to be that were theoretically going to be ironed out before the final legislation was done. But I guess those things aren't going to be ironed out by the time the final legislation
I think
is
the
done.
best we could do would be to get, for example, on the parking development, cost ranges from the viable applicants and at least be able to identify it within a range.
All right. Anybody have any other questions?
While my mic is hot, I would just add that wanted to apologize. We had several team members that had previous commitments all out of state. Kelly Flannery is unfortunately at a funeral out of state. Sam Wilcox is out of state. Lucy Kemp is out of state. All previous engagements, and they all were regretful they could not be here. And Ms. Lane has one other thing to add.
Sure.
And I do want to clarify that initial March 3rd date is the initial culling. So we'll receive those responses on March 3rd, and then we will cull, shortlist, for lack of a better term, and then move forward with the more technical offers after that, with the evaluation of more technical offers that will be received after that. So I want to clear that up. You're not going to have an award coming 2 weeks after March 3rd.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate the clarification. All right, committee, without seeing any other questions, I think the thing to talk about next is what do we do next as a committee? And my personal assumption is that we won't have legislation for first reading on March 7th, but maybe we will, but probably not. So I don't know that there's anything for us to do until legislation comes out. What do you guys think? All right. Maybe we can, last thing before we go then is make sure that we have an understanding with our esteemed council director about what kind of review is going to happen afterwards. And it's been since before the holidays since we talked about this. The committee talked about it some at the last meeting, which I think you weren't able to make. But basically the way we've talked about it, or I've suggested it, is when we get the final pile of documents, the first thing I think anybody wants to know is what is the same as the term sheet, what's different than the term sheet, what's new that wasn't there before, what's been deleted that was there before. And I don't know that we got to really a firm finish line on whether you were going to do that or whether legal was going to do it with your review. Do you have thoughts about how you're going to get that done?
Well, I had not given a lot of thought on that until right now, but no, all of those things are definitely things that I would review. I'm happy to, try to coordinate that review with the legal department. I don't know if they're going to submit the full package of documents with something, with a memo attached, kind of demonstrating what they took out and what they left and what they added. But no, I definitely will go through and do that type of review for sure.
Well, Mr. Jameson, I suppose it stands to reason the more proactive the administration or legal or Mr. Oldham or whoever is with giving us that kind of analysis that Director Darby can sign off on, that's going to depend. That's going to matter to the pacing for how fast it goes through the council. You guys got anything to add on that? All right. Well, then I think we are going to adjourn without setting a next meeting, and we'll wait for the legislation to be filed. So thanks a lot, everybody.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.